It was a chilly afternoon in downtown Oak Ridge, a small city where everyone seemed to know everyone. The city was a blend of old and new, with modern high-rises towering over small family-owned businesses. Oak Ridge had its charm, but there was also an undercurrent of unspoken tension. Leah Carter, a graceful woman in her early 30s, had just stepped out of her favorite local café, a cozy little spot she often visited for a midday break. The warmth of the coffee still lingered in her hands as she made her way to her car, parked just a few steps away. Leah was the wife of the city's police commissioner, Jonathan Carter, but she preferred to keep a low profile, never wanting to be treated differently because of her husband's position. Just as she reached for her car door, two uniformed officers, Grant and Miller, approached her. They moved quickly, their presence unsettling. Leah immediately sensed something was off. "Excuse me, ma'am," Grant said, his tone sharp. "We need to ask you a few questions." Leah frowned, confusion washing over her. "Is something wrong, officers?" Miller stepped forward, his gaze cold and calculating. "We've had reports of suspicious activity in this area. We need to search you." Leah blinked, trying to process their words. "Suspicious activity? I just left the cafe. Is there a specific reason why you want to search me?" She kept her voice calm, though unease twisted in her stomach. Grant crossed his arms, his posture rigid. "Are you refusing a search?" Leah's instincts flared. She wasn't resisting, but this wasn't right. "No, I'm not refusing," she said carefully. "But do you have any reason to suspect I've done something wrong?" Miller didn't bother answering. He stepped closer, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. "Turn around," he ordered. "We need to search you." Leah's breath caught in her throat. "Search me? But why? I haven't done anything wrong." "Turn around, ma'am," Grant repeated, his voice hard. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." Passers-by hurried by, avoiding eye contact, too afraid to get involved. Leah's pulse pounded in her ears as she reluctantly turned. The cold metal of the cuffs snapped around her wrists as Miller began an aggressive pat-down, pulling at her coat, searching through her handbag. A deep sense of humiliation swept over her. She had done nothing wrong, yet here she was, being treated like a criminal. Miller's hand rested on her shoulder as he finished the search. "You sure you're not hiding anything, lady?" Leah clenched her jaw, but kept her voice steady. "I'd like to call my husband." Grant let out a mocking laugh. "Oh? And who's your husband?" "Go ahead, call him. Let's see who he is." With her hands now free, Leah pulled out her phone and dialed. The line barely rang twice before a deep, commanding voice answered. "Leah? What's wrong?" It was Jonathan. "They're searching me, Jonathan." "Officers Grant and Miller," she said, her voice laced with controlled anger. Silence. Then Jonathan's voice returned, sharp and cold. "Where are you?" "Olive and Maple. I just left the cafe. I'll be there in 5 minutes." His tone left no room for argument. Leah held on to that reassurance, her heartbeat steadying slightly. The officers still stood in front of her, smug and confident, but something in their eyes flickered when they saw a black SUV pull up at an alarming speed. The car came to an abrupt halt, and the door swung open. Jonathan Carter stepped out. Tall, imposing, and dressed in his full commissioner's uniform, he strode toward them with a fire in his eyes. The officers stiffened. They recognized him instantly. "Commissioner Carter," Grant stammered. Step aside," Jonathan ordered, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. The officers hesitated, but the authority in his voice left no room for argument. They moved back instantly. Jonathan turned to Leah, his expression softening as he scanned her face. "Are you all right?" His voice was gentle now. Leah nodded, though the humiliation still burned in her chest. "I'm fine, but," she glanced at the officers. Jonathan's face hardened again as he turned to them. "Explain yourselves." Grant shifted nervously. "We had reports of suspicious activity in the area, sir." She matched the description. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. Matched the description of what? Did she resist? Did she threaten you in any way? Miller's voice was barely audible. "No, sir." The once bustling street was now filled with silent spectators, watching the scene unfold. Jonathan took a step closer, his voice dangerously calm. "Then why did you feel the need to harass her?" His voice dropped, steel in every word. "Was it because she's black? Was that your only suspicion?" Grant swallowed hard. "Sir, we were just following protocol." Jonathan let out a humorless laugh. "Your protocol is broken. And you're about to face the consequences." The air was thick with tension. The officers stood frozen, knowing they had crossed a line they could never uncross. Without breaking his gaze from them, Jonathan pulled out his phone and dialed internal affairs. "I want Officers Grant and Miller under immediate investigation," he said. "They are to be suspended from duty until further notice." Grant's face drained of color. "Sir, we didn't mean to." Jonathan cut him off with a sharp look. "Didn't mean to what?" His voice was lethal now. "Didn't mean to harass my wife? Didn't mean to treat her like she was less than human? Or didn't mean to get caught?" Miller, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke, his voice shaky. "It was a mistake, sir. We were just doing our job." Jonathan's stare was ice cold. A mistake that could have escalated into something far worse. "And do you think that's an excuse?" The crowd murmured. Some whispered among themselves, others stood silent as justice played out before them. Internal affairs officers arrived shortly after, pulling Grant and Miller aside for questioning. Their smug attitudes had vanished, replaced with fear and regret. Leah stood beside Jonathan, watching as the officers were led away. She felt a sense of relief but also a lingering sadness. She had been judged not for her actions, but for her skin color. And though justice was being served, the pain of the experience would stay with her. Jonathan turned to her, his expression softening. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said quietly. "It won't happen again." Leah gave him a small smile. "Thank you for coming. I didn't know what else to do." "You did the right thing," Jonathan replied, putting a protective arm around her. "And now, they'll face the consequences." As they walked away, the people of Oak Ridge whispered about what had happened. It was a day they wouldn't forget, a day when the wife of the commissioner had been wrongly harassed, but justice had been served swiftly and publicly. And it was a lesson to all that no one, not even the police, was above the law.